I now have the pleasure to introduce today's commencement speaker and friend of the college, Pete Geren. A native of Fort Worth, Geren earned his undergraduate degree in history at UT Austin prior to attending the University of Texas Law School. He briefly practiced law in Fort Worth before turning to politics, where he worked as an aide to Democratic Senator Lloyd Bentsen. He was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1989, and he served the citizens of Tarrant and Parker counties for 4 consecutive terms. Later, he was confirmed as the 20th Secretary of the Army. Since 2011, Geren has served as president and CEO of the Sid W. Richardson Foundation. In this role, he honors the legacy of the foundation's namesake by overseeing the foundation's support of educational, health, human service, and cultural programs that serve the people of Texas. He also oversees the Sid Richardson Museum. Geren's personal philanthropy has established crucial scholarships at the University of Texas, where he's been recognized as both a distinguished alumnus and a distinguished alumnus for community service at the law school. In addition, Geren and the Richardson Foundation have supported the Thomas Jefferson Center and You Teach Liberal Arts in our college. Geren was the recipient of the 2023 Pro Bene Emeritus Award, the highest honor bestowed by the College of Liberal Arts, which is given to individuals who have made outstanding contributions to the liberal arts in professional or philanthropic pursuits. Please join me in welcoming and listening to Pete Geren.
Dean Stevens, thank you for the kind introduction, and I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity to share this occasion with all of you. It means more to me than I could ever say. Class of 2024, congratulations. To the moms and dads, and particularly to the grandparents, because I know as a grandparent, there's something special about the relationship between you and every one of these students here that nobody that's not a grandparent could ever explain or understand. So grandparents, congratulations to you. Graduates, while preparing for this occasion, I reminded myself that I sat where you sit in 1974, 50 years ago. And I thought, what could I say that would not sound like the words of a preachy and out-of-date old man from another planet? And more worrisome, what could I say that does not become a bad dad joke in my telling with a joke on me? So this is a risky assignment for a class of 1974. We have high expectations for you, the graduates of the College of Liberal Arts. You have to answer that question to parents. I remember stumbling on answering that question myself. Well, what are you going to do next? I can tell you, liberal arts education is a good place to start on a road to anywhere. It's a great place to start. The education you have is going to serve you well, and it's going to serve the communities you live well. The curiosity, the inquiring mind, the ennobled spirit, and the humility that is part of a liberal arts education will help us as a society find our way through these troubled times and get to the other side. And that humility, and perhaps the most important lesson of all in a liberal arts education, is that there is more you will never know than you will ever know. And that's humbling. Students on our 40 acres, pardon me, we gather tonight with an elephant in the room. Our university, our 40 acres, has been rocked by protests that we haven't seen on our 40 acres on our campus in the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. 50 Students on our 40 acres, their 40 acres, have safety concerns because of their religious faith. We're Texas. That's not Texas. We will join hands to make it right. We all will join hands to make it right. Who would have thought so? But we can look to Broadway to put our aspirations in words and set them to music. Probably many of you, if you haven't seen it, you know all the music to Hamilton. In Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda, his George Washington character, implored all of us that watched it, "May the children of the stock of Ibrahim, who dwell in this land, merit and enjoy the goodwill of everyone, and sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." Those words, he didn't make them up. Those actually came from a letter George Washington wrote in 1790. It captures our aspirations well. We all have been touched by the protests in different ways, deeply and personally for most of us, and it's still raw for some of us, and I'm sure some of you who are here tonight. I could not prepare my remarks free from the influence of my personal reaction, nor could I expect you to hear them independently of your personal reaction. I do ask you, though, to reflect on the trials of the immediate in the context of our common lived experience over the last decade. We have not been at peace with ourselves for a very long time. I am an irrepressible optimist who spent much of his career in public life. I am dismayed at the empty seats at Thanksgiving tables and what has become of our public square, that today has rules more like an arena for cage fighting than civil discourse. Our media, social and traditional, has become an anger industrial complex, punching our anger, fear, and resentment buttons to hold their market share and to hang on to their advertisers. And the same with too many of our politicians on the right and on the left. They do the same for their benefit and at our loss. We can choose differently and we can choose better, and we will. This is a democracy. It may be slow, but it works for the people. We will. Tonight I will talk to you about people who faced worse in their lives and chose differently and better. And they will offer us a better path, different and better from the path we seem to be locked into today. I'm going to begin by setting a table for you in the home of two grandparents. The story may strike you as out of left field at first, but bear with me. It was a round table that sat in an elegant living room between two high-backed chairs, covered with items all precious to the family, an exquisite porcelain vase, and irreplaceable handcrafted items that were made by their children over the years of their childhood. The grandparents hosted a party with adults in the living room there with that round table, and with children in the rear of the house, including 5 of the couple's grandchildren. When this story begins, the children are in the back of the house playing tag and a long way from the living room. Suddenly, the grown-ups hear squeals of laughter and the pounding of feet, of running feet coming their way from the back of the house. And that game of tag tumbled into the living room with that table. There sat the table with its precious keepsakes. Spoiler alert, The story does not have a happy ending, but it ends well. Viktor Frankl wrote one of the most important books of the last century, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a world-renowned psychiatrist, drawing on his medical education and his life experience. That wise man told us, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I repeat, there is a space, and there lies our power to choose. The people I'm going to talk about tonight claimed that space for themselves, and they chose freedom. Back to the living room. The chase was on. The 11-year-old, I think you probably know what's about to happen. It happened to be a granddaughter, though. The 11-year-old granddaughter dodged a tag and crashed into the table. Everything crashed to the floor, and everything shattered. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to the grandfather. He was furious, his face flushed, but he held his tongue and walked back to his bedroom. His daughter, the mother of that 11-year-old grandchild, she followed him. She's a recovering alcoholic, and Frankl's quote has proven valuable to her in her struggle with her addiction. She shared it with her dad and told him that he was in that space that Frankl talked about, that he could let his instincts, his anger, choose his response, or he could. He could claim that space for himself. He could exercise his freedom and choose his own response. He and his daughter talked that through, and he chose freedom. The unhappy ending ended well. The grandfather is a dear friend, and he shared that story with me a couple of months ago. I couldn't get the Frankl quote out of my mind. Frankl would look at America today, the public square, and even our Thanksgiving tables, and see that we have ceded that space between stimulus and response to our base instincts, to our fight or flight reflex, and to our fears and our anger. Unwittingly, I give us that much, unwittingly, we have handed over that space, and I'm counting myself among that number, handed over that space and our freedom to people and events that punch our buttons. The better angels of our nature could not squeeze in edgewise. This condition we've chosen for ourselves is as old as time and has shaped much of world history, and never for the better. Accounts abound in our recorded history and in our songs, poetry, and literature. Homer began the Iliad with an account of rage seizing that space and ruling the day. Sing, goddess, Achilles' rage, dark and murderous, that cost the Greeks incalculable pain, pitched countless souls into Hades' dark, and left their bodies as feasts for dogs and birds. Rage had its way. Achilles didn't have his way. Rage had its way. Peter, Paul, and Mary sang mournfully during another dark era in our nation's history. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Your grandparents know the era, and they know the song, I can assure you. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa in 1994, after he spent 27 years in South African prisons. He claimed the space between stimulus and response for himself, and he chose freedom. He was asked by a biographer if he hated those who imprisoned him. He replied, "Absolutely, I did, because they had imprisoned me for so long. I was abused. I didn't get to see my children grow up. I lost my marriage, and I lost the best years of my life. I was angry, and I was afraid. But I realized that they could take everything from me except my mind and my heart. They could not take those things. Those things I had control over, and I decided not to give them away. I realized that when I went through that prison gate, if I still hated them, they would still have me. I wanted to be free, so I'll let it go. I wanted to be free, and so I let it go. He chose freedom. When the Russians invaded Ukraine, I read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's account of his 8-year imprisonment in the Soviet Union's beastly gulag, a system not unlike the one that holds Russia's political dissidents today and where Alexei Navalny was murdered recently. I read it to understand the history of a people who could rain down such savagery on neighbors and better understand the risk Russia posed to our free world. That's what I thought at the time. But since then, I've heard Viktor Frankl's words. In examining my motives through Frankl's eyes, I see I was not seeking to learn anything. When it came to the Russians, I'd closed my mind. I felt hatred, deep hatred towards them for what they were doing, what they had done. But now, examining my motives through Frankl's eyes, I see my mind was closed. I left no space to learn and choose. I was looking for fodder to fuel my anger, and I found it in abundance in that book. But Solzhenitsyn does not let you stop there with your anger fueled. He does not conclude with a prosecutor's final argument in a capital punishment case. Rather, he forces the reader to step back and create space between stimulus and response. He did it with this. At the end of his book, he said this is what he concluded after 8 years in beastly conditions. The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts inside us, it oscillates with the years, and even with hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. Solzhenitsyn's wisdom is timeless, and there is no better time to recall it, to ponder it, than today. In the public square and at the Thanksgiving table. It can afford us all space to think and to choose and exercise our freedom. Back to Viktor Frankl. He survived 3 years in Nazi concentration camps. His father and wife died of disease in those camps, and his mother and brother were murdered in gas chambers. Never forget him. Never again. Frankl, like Nelson Mandela and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, chose freedom and show us, each and every one of us, we can do the same, even in the worst of times. In his first inaugural, Lincoln beckoned the better angels of our nature and told Americans, we're not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. For all of us, that's a good place to start. How do we do this? How do we put it in action? Well, our accounting majors have given us a great tip for claiming that space between stimulus and response. When you sense that first twinge of anger, fear, or resentment, count to 10, slowly. Thank you, accountants. Our liberal arts majors can offer ideas on how to fill that space. This is where your liberal arts education kicks in. The questions you ask yourself, the questions you ask others. The prophet Micah offered guidance 2,700 years ago, and it survives today in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament. And it may take longer than a 10 count to wrestle through his guidance. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And it's not multiple choice. Justice, we're pretty good at that. Justice and mercy, it's harder. And it often poses a struggle, I can tell you, in my own heart. And walk humbly. Yes, justice and mercy. Justice and mercy. Well, as I close, I want to recall, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. I think you are. Our characteristically immodest claim that we're Texas. I don't have the voice to do it justice, something like, we're Texas. Don't you know that drives the Aggies crazy? And we all enjoy that. But we're Texas and they aren't. We're Texas and they aren't. But what does that mean, we're Texas? Are we Greeks, freaks, cowboys, nerds, or geeks? Are we country-fried or city-fried? Coal, cattle, timber, and oil? Or microchips, green energy, robotics, and the cloud? Pickup trucks or Tesla? Business, biochemistry, or ballet? Liberal, moderate, or conservative, or libertarian? Willie Whalen and the boys? Or Posty and Queen Bee? And I have to thank my granddaughter for that line. Are we Hindu, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim? We're Texas. We are Texas. And this liberal arts major answers those questions with yes, 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 and yes. We are Texas. We are Texas. God bless Texas. Congratulations to the class of 2024, and hook 'em horns. Thank you.